The question is, as on the order paper, Minister Justin Tomlinson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We are in extraordinary times. The coronavirus pandemic is the most serious public health emergency that our nation has faced for a generation. This government will do whatever it takes to get our nation through it. We all need to pull together. We can, must and will get through this. And before I go on to the main part of my speech, I do want to pay tribute to all of our fantastic staff, particularly those on the front line, who are doing their level best where they can to help support some of the most vulnerable people in society to be able to continue to receive benefits, and for those that are now in need of accessing those benefits. And I also would say I do recognise that the spirit of this debate is showing Parliament at its best. We are all seeking to work in partnership. These are uncharted times. There are new things coming forward. I've talked to lots of stakeholders in the last few days as we've made announcements for our department, and normally in normal times we could spend 18 months developing policies, testing them, doing engagement up and down the country, talking to people with real life experiences to make sure there aren't unintended consequences, and we are on a daily basis having to review things. And I know that this debate, and it's a credit to the opposition that it is being done in that spirit of partnership, as we can look and feed in things that need to be considered to provide further support, and I know that on a daily basis more support will come forward. Now, our policy is to protect lives and fight this virus with everything we have. Everyone should follow the government guidance to control the spread of the disease. Those who have a high temperature or a new contagious cough, and those who share a home with people presenting these symptoms, should stay at home in self-isolation for 14 days. Everyone should avoid unnecessary travel and social contact with others, and people who should work from home. This will help to protect the NHS and safeguard those who are the most vulnerable. And I want to reassure members of the House that this government will provide a safety net and support for individuals during this testing time. Everybody will be supported to do the right thing, and this government will help employers to support their employees to do the right thing. Yes.
Well, I know the Minister is very dutiful in the job that he does, and I thank him for that. But I've had contact today from a lady and a mother. She's isolating because of her child. Is she eligible for sick pay from government, or does she have to take dependence leave, which is unpaid, which would be very unfair? And just how can that work?
Well, where people in work are isolating due to government guidance, and that seems to be the case with the circumstances described, then they would be eligible for statutory sick pay through their employers. But also, in addition to that, it is always worth looking on gov.uk to see whether they can also get additional support through the welfare system, whether that's universal credit or new style ESA. And yes.
Minister for giving way. And like him and others across this House, I'm looking to be collaborative, as I generally try to be, particularly in this type of circumstance. But the issue, the type of which that has been raised by the honourable member from Strangford, it typifies the confusion and the information that is out there for people to follow in terms of guidance and support, which is why the suggestion from my right honourable friend at Prime Minister's questions about some form of minimum income guarantee that would cover all of these issues and mean that people could just do what is right at the right time without having to worry about the financial consequences. Is that something that the department is looking at?
I thank the honourable member, and I've said many times at the dispatch box that I do admire the way that he contributes and supports trying to help some of the most vulnerable people in society. And there were 2 points there. First of all, was around the general communication. You know, these are fast-moving events. We all, as constituency MPs, are getting a lot of correspondence with people asking very reasonable questions. Where possible, we're trying to give as good answers as possible. But really, we have to keep putting people towards the gov.uk websites where there is consistent communications and share that. I will just let me answer the second point. Then, in terms of that providing that minimum net, that is where the welfare system comes into play, because statutory sick pay, and it is important, I will go over that only applies in some cases, whereas the welfare safety net applies to all who need it. Yes.
Speaker, and I believe the Minister will know that cross-party working is in my DNA, and I really do want to do everything I can to make sure we get this right. This is a personal but a pertinent point. My own son Stuart is self-employed. He has a wife who has had dialysis since she was 14, 10-year-old son Liam. They're all self-isolating. Stuart is not having an income. They live in rented accommodation. The utilities are essential to keep the dialysis going. I have a very frightened family and I have very many frightened constituents. Any clarification on what we can do would be most grateful. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member, who I've worked very closely with on a number of issues, and I know she's held in huge respect across both sides of the House. And I, prior to being an MP, ran my own business. I understand the concerns of self-employed people who've suddenly overnight seen dramatic changes to their cash flow, ability to trade as a business. And I absolutely understand the worries that people will face. And that is why we are allowing access to statutory sick pay, or they can, depending on their personal circumstances, looking at whether it's new style ESE, the contributory benefits, which is probably the case for somebody who's self-employed, or the wider support offered through universal credit and the welfare net. So they would need to look at what their circumstances are, talk to the job centres and see what they're doing. We are all trying to do our best to provide as much certainty as quickly as possible through the daily updates.
He will know that very many people are really worried about the financial impact of self-isolation, whether they're sick or not. He's mentioned a few times the sick pay, he's mentioned the alternatives of universal credit and I think ESA. But these sums of money simply won't pay the rent, the bills, or put food on the table. He also mentioned the speed with which action is needed and how much faster his department is having to react than normal. If this takes till next week to put in place, very many more people will have not taken the action to protect themselves and everybody else. The action is needed now. People need the money now. Please, will he respond on that point?
I absolutely understand the point the honourable member is making, and these are extraordinary times. We collectively are all trying to, as quickly as possible, to identify the right levels of support. In pure cash terms, the fiscal support that we've already provided at this stage of the curve is almost the highest across the world. But it isn't complete. As events progress, we've got to do more. We expect more announcements. I understand in an ideal world you could announce everything straight away, but we've got to make sure it is right, and we've got to react as things come forward, and we've got to communicate it as quickly and as clearly as possible. So we do understand that. We do understand that. And let me just make a little bit of progress, because I think some of the things being asked I am about to cover, but I will take more interventions, I promise. And extraordinary times do call for extraordinary measures. That is why we have extended statutory sick pay to those who are self-isolating in line with the latest government health guidance. This guidance is available online on gov.uk. This ensures that eligible individuals, whether they are sick or self-isolating, will be entitled to statutory sick pay if they are unable to work because they are following government advice. The upcoming emergency bill will mean that for people affected by coronavirus, statutory sick pay will be payable from day one instead of day 4, as it is currently backdated, and it will be currently backdated to the 13th of March. On that point about getting support to people as quickly as possible, that's why we removed those waiting days. These are crucial measures to ensure that employees do not attend work when they should be staying at home, helping to keep themselves and others safe. These are exceptional circumstances, and we urge employers to do the right thing, use their discretion, respect the medical need to self-isolate. Statutory sick pay is a legal minimum, and employers can offer more. Employers should support, where possible, their employees to work from home to help slow the spread of the virus. If employers do feel the need to require evidence, people are advised to self-isolate for coronavirus will soon be able to obtain an alternative to the fit note by contacting NHS 111 rather than visiting a doctor. We are all aware of the need to protect the GP surgeries so they can concentrate on the key areas of work. And accordingly, the government will ensure that businesses are supported to deal with the temporary economic impact of the outbreak of coronavirus. Small and medium enterprises are at the heart of our economy, symbolising the hard work and enterprising spirit of our nation. To support these employers with the increased costs of sick pay, the emergency bill will legislate so that employers with fewer than 250 employees can reclaim up to 2 weeks statutory sick pay paid for sickness absences relating to coronavirus. This includes those who are required to self-isolate in line with government guidance, and this measure could provide over £2 billion worth of support for up to 2 million businesses and will be crucial in ensuring that our economy keeps running. This is in addition to other measures to support businesses outlined by the Chancellor yesterday. The £330 billion of government-backed and guaranteed loans, the additional cash grants of up to £25,000 for businesses in the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors with a rateable value of less than £51,000, the cash grants of £10,000 to £700,000 of our smaller businesses, and this government will do whatever it takes to support our economy. Of course, not everyone is eligible for statutory sick pay, which is paid by employers. Gig workers and those on zero-hour contracts may be entitled to sick pay, and they should check with their employer. But there are millions of hard-working people who are self-employed or in the gig economy who will need our help too. That's why during this period we're making it easier to access benefits. And I know the Shadow Secretary of State talked about disability benefits in the announcement that we made earlier in this week. The first decision was to remove face-to-face assessments so that, because we recognised that a significant proportion of those who could be claiming disability benefits are vulnerable, and to avoid them having to do unnecessary travel, to be in busy waiting rooms, and we decided to stop face-to-face assessments. What we don't want to do is stopping new people gaining access to the support that they're entitled to. So we are seeking to continue to do paper-based reviews and telephone reviews, but prioritising those who are new claimants and looking on a daily basis in terms of the workforce. Yes.
Minister, for giving way, and I very much agree with the policy that he's just setting out. But can he clarify what the intention is about reassessments? He'll know that Mind and I think one or two others have suggested that reassessments ought not to be going ahead at the moment, partly because it's very difficult for people to get medical evidence in support of their reassessment claim at a time when doctors are very busy with something else.
And I absolutely understand that point, and the Honourable Member and I discussed this when we first made the announcement. The reality is the absolute priority has to be new claimants seeking to get support through the various benefits, the disability benefits system. So we are looking at that on a daily basis, what we can do. I don't envisage that we will be able to do much beyond that, but what I want to make sure is that those new claimants are able to do that, which is why right at the beginning of my speech I pay tribute to the fantastic work of those who are working on the front line, who like all people are anxious about events but are still where they can coming in to make sure those vulnerable people in society are able to access the support that they are entitled to. And those not... Yes, of course, yeah.
Thank the Secretary of State for giving way. He talks about statutory sick pay as being part of the safety net, and he recognises then as such as a safety net it is a benefit, if you like, of last resort, and he talks about the way in which companies can offer more. But does he therefore recognise that in this unprecedented situation when so many people are likely to find themselves either by choosing to self-isolate or being obliged to self-isolate in the position of claiming statutory sick pay, that the level is not appropriate to drive the right behaviours or to support people? It is no longer a question of last resort. It is a question of supporting significant proportions of our population, and so it needs to be at a higher level.
Very good.
You'll remember, I'm not the Secretary of State. It's very kind to elevate me to such a lofty position. That's not something that applies. But the broader point, the Chancellor has made it very clear that we will continue on a daily basis to look at what additional support. The government will do what the government needs to do to protect the vulnerable in society and to keep our economy going. And that's why I know many members today will raise very important points, but as a broad principle, the safety net is the wider welfare support, looking at an individual's personal circumstances and tailoring the level of support to them so we can target help to the most vulnerable in society. And those not eligible for sick pay, including those who are self-employed, are able to make a claim for universal credit or contributory employment and support allowance. And last week we laid regulations to ensure that the contributory employment and support allowance is now payable from day one, removing the 7-day waiting days for people self-isolating on government guidance or ill with coronavirus. Claims can also be made over the phone without the need to contact their doctor to get a fit note. Those in self-isolation or sick with coronavirus who make a claim to universal credit can receive up to a month's advance up front without physically attending a job centre. Everything can be done by phone or online, and that is a welcome position. Yes.
What metrics has he taken to ensure that those phone calls are dealt with in a timely manner? There's always complaints about people having to ring and ring and ring and not get an answer.
Well, friend, and you know, we would anticipate unprecedented demand, and that is why part of the reason that we have looked to see work that we no longer need to do during this period, for example, the announcement to end the face-to-face assessments for disability benefits, to move those health professionals onto the telephone systems to make sure that we can cope with the demand coming in, and actually then removing the need for people to unnecessarily visit job centres. So that is something that we're keeping a very close eye on a day-to-day basis. We are also now removing the minimum income floor for self-employed universal credit claimants who have to self-isolate or become ill as a result of the coronavirus during this period. These are the measures, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we are taking to ensure that people are supported throughout this difficult period. We've increased access to sick pay, easier to access benefits, support for businesses to protect people's jobs. This is a comprehensive package of support for some of the most vulnerable to society, but we are continuing to look at this by the day. The Chancellor has made it clear there will be further announcements. Yes.
The Minister for giving way. Two of my constituents who were both self-employed have had all their contracts brought to an end. They have a mortgage, they have two young children, and not surprisingly, like many of the other cases members have raised, that they are very worried for the future. What support should I tell them the government is going to be making available to help their specific situation?
I think you'll remember, and we're all having similar queries as constituency MPs. And the key is to keep looking at the gov.uk to see the announcements as they are made each day, so there is clarity about what they can and can't get. In this particular case, the Honourable Member talked about that they had a mortgage. Obviously, we've already made the announcement about the support for a mortgage holiday to protect people. And as part of the next step of our plan is to focus on providing support to people, their income and their jobs, and there will be further announcements. And that is shaped by all of us. As we flag up the issues being brought into our inboxes, that is what is helping shape. This is Parliament at its best through partnership working, and I hope that all members of the House will give all of the work that we are doing and all of our fantastic frontline staff are doing their full support.
Yeah.